If you, so one of the things that we've seen change, and I'll answer that in that way, is that it used to be, when I got into this, we were laser focused on just what the user wanted and the user goals. And as we've evolved, it becomes, how do we satisfy those user goals in a way that ladders up to the business objectives and the business strategy, right? So a lot of times those dates are set based on a business need. And if you make an argument that, even if we make the date, we're going to miss the overall strategy, we're going to miss the opportunity, you have a much better chance of making that argument. You have to make the argument that a lot of times those are driven by either by a commitment that somebody has made based on, you have to understand why that commitment is made, right? You have to almost do a little ethnographic research and like, why is that commitment made? Was it somebody's bonus? Was it,
oh,
that never happens, right? Was it that there's a launch going on? What is it about that? And then be able to come with another solution. I always find that it's better, it's always more likely to succeed if I have an alternative to come with and say, okay, I don't think we can do what you asked for, but here's what we can do, which will answer, which will also solve your problem. And in some cases, it's nuts and it'll never happen anyway, but you can't do much about crazy.
Well, I think that Agile question, that kind of is a riff on that, right? Because some companies won't wait the 4 weeks of Sprint Zero to say, this is the time, before Sprint Zero, say, this is really the time we need, right? We still need that upfront time before you start, so that and I know there's a lot of people who have done this kind of practice where they're trying to stay a week ahead or 2 weeks ahead, but then you've still got to work in the testing. The user testing piece, and then trying to back time all that, and I think that's become a real struggle for people. And I got training at a big company on Agile where I asked about UX. They said, "Oh yeah, talk to the marketing people," and it just, it needs to be incorporated. Did you have a question?
I wonder if you guys could comment on whether you think information architecture can be iterative.
Should be iterative,
Yeah,
but I don't
absolutely.
know. Yeah, but I would agree with you. The A word is something that, the agile word, is something we struggle with. In the same sense as that in my world, consulting, so we have timelines and we have budgets. And so if you look at the agile methodology, and again, I believe that it's more of a development methodology than a design methodology.
Absolutely.
But it runs on a theory that you will launch when you're ready to launch, when you get to a minimum viable product. And that'll happen at some point, but you don't know exactly what point that is because you have a backlog and you have refactoring and all of that. In my world, and in most of my clients' world, that doesn't work real well because they have to launch on a date with a particular set of features and functions. And so...
and that's often true not in a consulting environment too, where there's deadlines you have to hit.
Yeah, but it should be iterative. You should not, I've never, and maybe more talented people have, but I've never gotten to the exact right solution the first time. It's always been something that I've learned from the users tell me that I was wrong. I don't like that message, but I get it a lot. And the users tell me that, and we keep going. And as you said with testing, that's where we want to do that. Is it costs a lot of money to launch these products, to launch these programs, to put these websites out, these apps, to put a kiosk in a store or all of your store. The last place you want to get the first inclination that something needs to pivot is when you actually spent all that money and it's in place. And we've seen that with some of our clients where they've spent millions of dollars, put something in place, and it just doesn't go anywhere, and then what do you do with next, right? And a lot of times they'll get stuck with it. Like we've spent all that, it's like that sunk cost.
And there's the launch date.
And there was a launch date, and we've already sunk all this money into it. We got to make it work where, well, really, you need to go back and start over. But I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, so when we talk about the state of information architecture in NF, I think Daryl's point really hit the nail on the head when he talked about, we're creating a world that doesn't necessarily exist right now. My question is, when it comes to kind of developing, even at maybe an elementary, middle, or high school level? What are some of the creative ways that you all have found or finding to kind of help the people who we're kind of building this world for, to kind of help them learn some of that even at their ages? Does that make sense?
Anybody done any early ed on it? Not really.
So,
I think it's a great idea.
I think that's
it's
an
a
important
great-
question, though, because I
Yeah.
think, given that there isn't a defined discipline of information architecture, what are those skills that an information architect needs to have? And I don't know that there's, like, you kind of have to be both very detail-oriented person, but also a really big picture person. And so I think it's a unique set of skills.
even when we talk about, the competition is really in New York or California, maybe if, some of the different organizations that we're part of, just thinking about ways to engage even within those communities to kind of help people, help support their own communities as well, I think is a good, question about, what's the current state. And so, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know there's been some interest, from the Chamber Atlanta and some others who, some of them are participating, are going to see the stream. And so there's some tech groups within Atlanta that are also very interested in this topic and very supportive that we were doing it. So,
On that note, though, I think the question then comes down to how do you display a positive economic effect of those activities? Because at the end of the day, the guys who want to allocate resources at that level, they're thinking in dollars and cents. They're not thinking about, like, how do I make this kid smile, which is a very important question. But on the very high level, you've got to get to the economy of this. Like, what is the positive impact of, let's just say that we go with creativity. Right. So I teach these skills that help kids get more creative, which results in them types of disciplines, which leads them to go to college, which leads them to get a degree from Georgia Tech and apply it and become one of the most successful students, which leads them to pay taxes. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is about. So the question is, how do you take all those million steps and compress that into something that's that you can serve on the platform?
So to that, kind of riff on that, I would ask the panel, what do you think if somebody's working in IA or considering IA or working with IA, but mostly if you are in IA, what do you need to know to stay competitive? Like, what do you need to, like, what gives you an edge? Like, what would give you just a little bit, more to, like, stay in the job or be better at the job? I'm going to let you, because you're smiling, I'm going to let you go first.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I think the smile was there. Like, how am I
Like,
gonna
what
answer
is
this
she
question?
asking?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I can't remember who said it, but there was somebody that came out recently and said that if you're not spending 4 or 5 hours a week learning something new, that you're going to fall behind. So that's what I started to look for people is people who not only are very passionate about design and about users, but also knowledgeable beyond that particular thing and can talk about other things, right? So a lot of the innovation comes from pulling in ideas that may not have originated in a particular field, and you won't know about those unless you go out there. So people who have, one of the ways people do that is they travel, right? If you travel different places, you can learn things about other places. Now, you don't have to travel. I mean, this thing brings a lot of information. There's more information here than you can spend 4 or 5 hours a day learning that. But just being in the world, I guess, and being a student, continually being a student is the thing that we look for, and how you get an advantage, because you can talk to those particular elements with an eye, with the IA attitude.
Nice. Joe, do you?
Yeah, I think it really is a passion for knowledge and a passion for learning, not just within IA as a discipline. I mean, there's great community here in Atlanta for IA and for user experience and design. There's different meetups. There's IXDA. There's HFES. There's Chi Atlanta. There's
Ladies at UX. Ladies at UX.
there you go.
UX in the morning, yeah.
There's AMUX, there's a UX book club, there's a lot, it's
There's
awesome.
there's a never-ending, source of information there. But at the same time, we want to broaden our horizons and look at those other disciplines and those other domains that we might be able to glean and learn from.
Yeah, I have a couple of folks that have MBAs, right, in addition to HCIs. And so that's anytime you can broaden that, it doesn't have to be an MBA, it could be something else that broadens that, broadens your skill set, but also broadens how you think about problems.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, I think being kind of getting the broad view of a lot of different experiences will influence your design. I think on a specific level, I think it's worth spending time with other stuff that's out there. So like not just using other websites or products or whatever, but looking at them critically and professionally, and go maybe do it with a small group on a regular basis, and analyze what's working and what isn't working well in that product. I think see what you can learn from what someone else has done, I think is a good practice.
When you do that, you quickly become a critic of the world, right?
Yeah.
It becomes second nature. Everything is, that could have been done better. Wow. That chair is terrible. No, anyway.
So one thing where I worked before, we've set up, tried to do it on a weekly basis, but it was more like monthly, but a study group of people who were interested that we would get together, over lunch every Friday or once a month on Fridays and do just that.
Yeah, one of the things that we were talking about here is, should we do some kind of match off on the tools? Are there certain tools that make you more competitive? Are there certain, like you've got to know this one or you got to go know that one? And sometimes when you see these jobs postings, they've got like 6 of them that you're supposed to know. Who does that, right? So it's like, are there any, but it sounds like from what you gentlemen are saying, it's more about how you think and the life learning piece of it than the actual whatever the tool du jour is.
Yeah, we'll teach you the tool. In my world, whatever that tool is. Sapien Nitro used to be a place where there were 8 or 9 different tools people would use across. We have 8 offices here,
That was
36
fun.
worldwide. Oh yeah, that was fun and different ways, right? Those of you who've ever done InDesign and Illustrator, there's about 4 or 5 different programs or ways you can use those together or separately. But beyond that, we'll teach you the tools to do that, but it's more about the ability to learn, the ability to quickly understand how a tool works. I'm not a big tool fan myself.
Okay.
I think the tools are useful. The best tool that you have is sitting up here between your ears. And whatever tool you can use to get that information across, it works. I mean, for the first X number of years in my career, I was in Visio. Is that a great tool? No. But it did what we needed to do. Are there better tools now? Yes. Do we use better tools? Yes. But the tool doesn't make the design. It's the designer, I think.
I guess one caveat, though, and I agree completely with this, but if you're trying to get a job and there's some recruiters who know a lot about this world and they understand that. Other times you have to get past like automated recruiting systems or something, and they're looking for check boxes, that you've got, you know this. So there can be a trade-off there.
Yeah. Eric, you got
Hey, Rebecca, just to kind of piggyback on this topic, and also just given the crowd that we've got here, where we've got students and people that maybe are transitioning into IA or interested in IA, I'd like the panel just to kind of talk about from their experience what, a lot of students, and like I've got a daughter who's in high school, she's being told, well, you really don't need to go to grad school, you really don't need to go to college. There's a lot of places like General Assembly, like Iron Yard, where you can learn some of this stuff and get right into the job field. So I think this is kind of a tension that employers are seeing, and they're wanting to, again, keep the costs low and get people in. You've got educational systems that are saying, hey, we're offering a broad variety here. Can you guys just kind of speak to some of that tension, and what would you tell some of the students in the room that are saying, hey, this is the field I'm interested in getting into or transitioning into, and I'm hearing these differing mindsets. Where would you guys land on that?
I
Joe's going to take that one from
I'll,
me.
I'll start at least. I mean, it really depends on what your goals are, and that's what we need to communicate to students, whether they're in high school and trying to decide what they want to do, or whether they're in undergrad and deciding whether they want to go to grad school, whether they're trying to decide whether they want to get a master's or a PhD. It really depends on what your goals are, and that's part of that process of teaching and helping them grow is thinking about their goals and their vision for their own life. Yes, there are things like General Assembly, and so if your goals are to come out and get a job with no debt, then that's a really good opportunity. If your goals are, you want to lead a company as a chief experience officer, then you might, need to go down in a more educational path to get that foundation underneath it.
Yeah, I think the other big thing that I would say to that is just, you don't have to feel like you're stuck where you are and that's your only career path. Like there's a lot of ways to move around. Like I started life as a journalist. I'm glad I can write and think and ask questions, but I'm really glad I'm a technologist now. So when you have core competencies that you build around things, that's how you evolve your career. And like what you were saying about you can move into product management, or you can move into this, or you can do that. It's like this is a starting place, but I think IA is a great starting place however you get there, because you're doing user-centered design, you're really thinking about the functionality, you're breaking it down to the bits to try to get people to the content the fastest possible. So wherever you go in your career, I think it's a really good fundamental. Do you want to say something?
No, I completely agree. I think about career path, if you have the college degree or the graduate degree, you can do things that you may not, it will be harder to do if you don't have that. But I do think General Assembly it's an important thing that they're doing, and I don't want to downplay the importance of the training that you can get at a place like this.
Yeah. Diane, did you?
So to add to that discussion, one of the greatest places to bring in as an information architect right now is any company that's working with large amounts of data and big data. So any company that's doing a big data play, they would be the best place for your skills right now as an information architect. Because they need people working on ontologies, taxonomies, hierarchies, doing database design. So it's a great way for you to use the skills you have or the skills you've just gotten to do that. And it's something that's going to grow because we have more complex data that has to be designed into all these complex systems that have to be displayed in lots of different ways. So that's just food for thought to think about. That's all.
Yep. Terry?
Back onto that. It seems like an IA is not so much this huge field, it's a huge skill set, and you're just expecting new experts to know it, as you hire them, and people don't all know to that level, but so they know like surface level IA, generalist UX, right?
Well, I mean, nowadays hierarchies are one thing, but actually defining an ontology, say, for an automotive company, is very complex and very deep. And if you're displaying data that has to be communicated to several different systems in several different ways, you need that depth of information architecture skill that we were using 20 years ago, that we kind of stopped using as much, but we're going to need that depth again. So I think that's the biggest opportunity, is in the big data areas.
Yeah.
Good insight.
Yeah, and there's a lot of discussion about using that data to feed back into the product and make it a lot better, right? So trying to, it's not just, it doesn't matter how many downloads you have. Well, it does, how many downloads you got, but how many people are actually using it and going back to it, and what are they doing when they're there? And a lot of companies, I think, are kind of like, oh, they're going for the big numbers, but then what are the real usage trends? But that's a whole nother Oprah, so we'll have to.
What I heard all you guys say, that this is the core skill set is solving problems. I totally agree. I think the idea is when you look at a problem, figure out how to solve it. That core skill goes with anything big is the problem that you're solving? Does it go down to fundamentals trying to figure the company, or is it a question of how does this one solve that problem?
So we've got about a couple of minutes left before the keynote. Yeah, you want to do a quick question?
Yeah, one of the things that has always intrigued me that I expected, I grew up kind of like you, starting in the journalism kind of field. There was always a high school yearbook and a high school newspaper, and I think that's been true for like 100, 150 years. I always had an expectation as web hosting came down in price, that high schools would have a high school website where they would have students participate in authoring the content and share sports team schedules and record concerts and plays and things as it went. And at the end of a calendar year or school year, it would become like the yearbook for the school. And a lot of the skills we've been talking about would be developed by kids participating in this. Is this happening, or is this something that maybe we can help contribute
Do we know?
to have happening to build a foundation for kids coming up with skill sets we need?
I think that does, I mean, my kids are a little past high school, but there were those experiences available to students in high school. I think it depends a lot on the school, but I think, I won't get political, but as we've emphasized basics in school, maybe there isn't as many opportunities for that.
I think they got a lot, at least a lot of the kids, my kids and the folks, the younger folks in my team, got a lot of those experience by creating their own Tumblr pages, by creating their own in social networking, and doing that was outside of the school itself. And they got a lot of those same kind of skill sets by doing that. And you'll see that a lot even in the solutions that we provide. We start getting into what background do the people that are, will oftentimes have groups of users that have no issues and groups of users that are having a lot of issues. What are the differences? It depends on when they grew up and what they did, in those areas. If you had that background with social media and with creating your own content and creating your own videos to post on YouTube and those kind of things, then you have a lot more, you're a lot more comfortable in exploring some of the systems we create. Whereas if you didn't, you're looking for much more of a guided experience that makes sure that it tells you this is exactly what I want you to do next.
Cool. So we're almost out of time for this panel, so I just want to do a lightning round of what is in your, we have it on the wall over there, so nobody gets to write those answers, the future of IA, but what is in your crystal ball here as panelists? Where do you see IA going? Just really quick answer.
So I think it's rosy, and I think
Good
is. There's right now all our discussions are really around websites, and I think there's a lot of new stuff coming along with the interaction between the software interface and the hardware interface, and it's a whole new world, I think, for designing those interactions.
Nice. Okay. Joe?
Yeah, I think going off your comment on big data is a big deal, right? Because it's going to allow us to collect more data on users and be able to give more personalized, design more personalized experiences based on that data. And then outside of that, you've also got lots of new technologies, lots of maturation around machine learning that's going to add into that, and going into devices and interactions with content that doesn't have an interface, using voice as your interaction point, and how that impacts our work as information architects is what I see going forward.
Well, I guess I have two things, one more long-term, one's happening faster than I think we realize. First is a digitization of the physical world, whether it's the Internet of Things, whether it's augmented reality where we have to develop a new language, whether it's replacing reality with virtual reality. I'm not a big, I think augmented reality is more likely to be where we need to go. And then the other one is like implantable digital. I think we're going to be in the next 10 years to the point where people have computers actually implanted in them and they're interfacing with them. How do we design the tools that will live on those systems, that will augment ourselves? I'm hoping I'm still around when that starts to happen, but in this industry. But that's where I see long term, where we're going to be. I think just carrying these things around with us will become inconvenient. we'll want it someplace a lot easier to interface with.
All right, well, on that note, you guys have a lot of work ahead of you, so. Let's thank the panel.